Hi there, Matt Hamilton, author of Through Travel and Error, Confessions of an Asylum-Seeking Canadian. Welcome back to my online readings. Today it's chapter 4, which is called Why Not? It's about my time in Ireland. I had met an Irish girl the day I flew out of Canada who invited me to her place in Cork, if I ever got that way, which is exactly what I did, and had a brilliant time down in the south partying it up, but I needed to see a little bit more of the country, and I had an opportunity one night sitting in a bar, and this is where we'll begin. Chapter 4, Why Not? I can give you a ride to Dublin. I was listening to every word Sabrina was saying. It was irrelevant that the pub was jam-packed or that I was once again blind drunk. I heard every syllable that came from her lips. I was listening to her because she was the first South African I met during my short time on the road. I was listening because she was the first person to tell me anything positive about her country. I was accustomed to the Western media's bleak portrayals of South Africa as a troubled and dangerous nation. I was listening because she was telling me about Cape Town's brilliant landscape, its exceptional nightlife, amazing beaches, friendly people, and cheap weed. I was listening because she was drop-dead gorgeous. I decided to take the ride. As I said, I've been down south Cork the whole time, and here was an opportunity to go up to Dublin with this absolutely stunning girl, but a few things happened along the way. The first thing was we left at 5 in the morning, which was way too early, being hungover, so chatting her up didn't happen, and I passed out in the back seat pretty much right away. And then next thing, we get dropped off in Wexford. I had misheard her the night before, and Wexford's a little ways away from Dublin, and it was a bit of a mission getting up there, but I did. Passed out for a few hours, woke up and met this guy named Gav, and he was a fashion photographer from London, and the two of us hit the town, and at one point in the evening he caught me in a yawn and said, you're fading on me, and I explained I was tired, and said, well, interested in maybe doing some speed. Speed was a new drug. Now, I've kind of indicated that I'm open-minded about drugs, and I think I was in the right frame of mind. I was aware of what speed was supposed to do, its short-term and long-term effects, and as I mentioned, I was in this great frame of mind and felt really comfortable in my environment and said, yeah. Now, a surprising thing happened. We dabbed the speed, and the pub's closed. So this is where we'll pick it up and what happened next. With nowhere to go, out on the streets we went. Gav, despite several direct and personal invitations from women I would have chewed my left arm off for, decided to stick it out with me. Maybe he knew he had a rookie speeder on his hands and felt it was best to see me home. Maybe he felt responsible for my well-being, or maybe he was too messed up himself to actually go home with the stunning women. I didn't care. It was great to have somebody to listen to me chatter. The two of us made our way back to the hostel only to find nobody awake. Don't worry, mate, I've got a chunk of hash that'll help us come down. I grinded a thanks through my teeth. We settled into the common lounge and smoked joint after joint to help ourselves mellow out from the speed rush. Despite Gav's generosity with his gear, I found that the hash wasn't helping me come down off the nasty chemical. Then, to make matters considerably worse, Mick stormed into the lounge. Mick, who was born and bred in Belfast, looked like your stereotypical ultimate fighting champion. He had tattoos up and down his massive arms, an even larger frame, missing teeth, and a menacing glare on his ugly, oversized lump of a shaved head. All of his knuckles were freshly cut. This made me wonder what the other guy looked like, and what gutter he was laying in, unconscious and bleeding. I knew you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but in this case, the book was wide open. And this guy, Mick, was off. He was a racist of note. He thought every Chinaman would be better off dead and lying in the bottom of the ocean. And being on speed and a little wired, it was quite a lot to take. But eventually he did piss off, and Gab decided he needed to get some sleep. And even though I was still quite wired, I said, I'm going to go to bed now. I got to my dorm, and just as I was about to open the door, I heard this belch behind me and looked back, and sure enough, it was Mick. And this is what happened as we decided or realized we were both in the same dorm room. There is an unwritten law among backpackers. When you sleep in a dorm room and you come in late, you try to be as quiet as possible so you don't disturb your fellow sleeping travelers. Most travelers abide by this considerate and simple guideline. Not Mick. The Belfast racist kicked open the door, flicked on the lights, burped, and stomped through the room, which was filled with sleeping backpackers. In one of the bunk beds, there was a guy cuddled up with a girl. Mick walked up to him and began yelling, "I fucking told you not to bring your fucking sluts back here, you fucking cunt." Then wham! Mick drilled the poor sleeping bastard in the mouth. Wham! Mick clocked him again. Mick yanked the dazed kid from the bed and began slamming him around the room. Everybody woke up. When they realized the maniac known as Mick was involved, everybody decided it was in their best interest to roll over and go back to sleep. The girl was screaming hysterically. She grabbed what clothes she could and ran naked from the room. The fight continued. Mick landed the majority of the punches. And when I say the majority, what I really mean is all the punches. It was a beating. The kid, bleeding like a stuck pig, managed to free himself from Mick's grip and ran from the room. I was left with the raging psycho. "I was gonna fucking kill him," the maniac screamed. And with that death threat, Mick reached into his ass-stomping boot and pulled out a knife. Lovely. Now the violent lunatic has a weapon. He waved the blade in my face in an inquisitive manner and asked, "Do you think I was right?" I wasn't sure what to say. He asked for my opinion on the assault and battery a second time. "Do you think I was fucking right?" Everything was unfolding way too fast for my liking. I had a hammered, homicidal maniac who, for no apparent reason, pounded some sleeping kid. Now he was asking me, a guy who was seriously confused and stressed about the situation, if I thought his blatantly unjustifiable actions were justified. I needed to choose my words very carefully. Despite the speed in my system, I was able to put together a lucid thought. I said it very quickly, but at least it was coherent. I conveyed that I had no idea what their history was and that maybe things would seem better in the morning. I babbled some crap about tomorrow being another day and that my best advice would be to sleep on it. I didn't know if my suggestion had gotten through his thick-hammered melon or if the lunatic was about to launch into another violent outburst. He just stared at me. He stared with his chest heaving, his nasty liquid breath wafting in my face, and always with the knife gripped in his hand. The silence was only broken by my grinding teeth. Then an amazing thing happened. Mick broke from his pig-ugly gaze and said, "You know?" He still had the knife in my face. However, he wasn't shaking it aggressively anymore. He was waving the blade in a way that indicated deep thought. "You know," he continued, "I think you're fucking right." Miraculously, my bullshit worked, and I was able to subdue the monster. Mick belched one last time. He lay down on his bed fully dressed, closed his eyes, and passed out with the knife still in his hand. Before I could exhale, Mick began to snore. In fact, the noises roaring out of his face well surpassed the boundaries of snoring. Yeah, needless to say, I didn't sleep much that night, and the next morning when I saw Gav and told him the story, he had a bit of a giggle, and I actually jumped on a bus back to Cork. I was actually running out of time and needed to get myself on a plane over to Amsterdam, which is where the next chapter will take us. But I guess the idea of this chapter was that you're going to come across people on your travels. They're going to be strangers. Some of them are good and some of them are bad, and some of them, like Mick, are bad and ugly. And, you know, I think I used pretty good common sense in trusting Gav, and I used pretty good common sense in keeping my distance and choosing my words wisely with Mick. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that little snippet. If you're interested in finding out more, please visit my website, madmaddiesworld.com. You can find out where you can get the book there. Anyways, we'll talk to you next week. Until then, have a great one. Bye-bye.